It had been many, many long decades since humanity had last been drawn into a war they would surely win. It had been hard fought though, their many victories snatched from the jaws of defeat on countless occasions, not just thanks to their own tenacity and expertise in warfare, but also thanks to their more supernatural allies, many of which were former humans. Werewolves, vampires, eldritch deities, ghosts bound to VHS tapes, and of course, the redacted. All had risen to fight the Empire, to defy the Arid, and to secure humanity's future once again. But this is not a tale of war, no. This is a tale of some idiot criminals who decided it's a good idea to mess with humanity yet again. A group of fools who have found an exceedingly human dwelling, nestled deep within a lush, vibrant forest, just as the suns began their descent. It was a quaint little house, only 2 stories tall, but large enough for an average human family. There was a well-maintained garden that wrapped around the front and side of the house. A small pond on the opposite side, filled with aquatic lifeforms of less than sapient nature. It was an idyllic place for a home, one that knew peace and joy. What was about to happen would be a very small bump on an otherwise smooth road. The criminals, low-level gangsters with barely a brain cell between them, were part of an equally idiotic gang that somehow, for all its poor choices, had managed to survive long enough to garner a reputation as being so incompetent they managed to be competent, as paradoxical as that may be. Having gotten lost in the forest while out on patrol, they had stumbled upon the home and decided that it was the perfect target for a good old time of breaking and entering. Maybe they could find something of value. After all, anyone living this far from the city must surely be protecting something. So, the 5 gangsters sat on their haunches, their snouts sniffing the air and detecting something that didn't seem quite right. But they had neither the foresight to figure it out, nor the willingness to do so in the first place. Finally, they decided it was time to put their vague outline of a plan in motion. It was dusk, and that meant the humans would be growing more and more tired with every passing moment. Thus it'd be the perfect time to strike, as the denizens within could not even hope to resist, as well as they normally would be able to. So, the group began to creep forwards, falling onto all fours for better sneaking. They were scavengers. They most resembled hyenas with scales. They were not the most intelligent or innovative species, but they made good use of what intelligence they did have, as early in their history, their homeworld was used as a junkyard for anything the rest of the galaxy didn't want or need anymore. At the time, nobody even knew they existed, so it was quite the surprise when all of a sudden, there were ships filled with unknown aliens taking off from the planet. So here they were, creeping up on a perfect little home in a perfect but large forest. When they reached the door, they did what criminals are known to do. They broke in. However, instead of picking the lock or simply attempting to open the door in the event it was unlocked, they kicked the door in, plasma weapons raised, and snarls in their throats. They expected the screaming of women and children, of the fierce bellowing of a male. Instead, they were greeted by a short, slightly plump human woman in a quaint little sundress and with a shawl around her shoulders. She briefly looked surprised by the sudden entry appearance of aliens, forcing their way into her home, but it was quickly replaced with a soft smile and holding up a tray of what appeared to be cookies in her oven-mitt-clad hands. "Well, it's about time. I was beginning to think you boys weren't going to come say hello. Cookie," she said, her tone jovial and unperturbed. The gangsters stood there, utterly confused by this response to their sudden entrance. "Shame about the door, but I suppose it'll give Victor something to do. He's been getting bored lately. And that. Give us all your valuables." One of the gangsters barked, and the human woman blinked, the tray lowering slightly. "Why?" she said, and the gangsters paused. Surely she knew why. They had the guns and the numbers, and whoever this Victor was wouldn't stand a chance against them either. So it was clear that they should just do whatever the gangsters said. Because we have guns. We kill you if you don't give us what we want," another said, and the human woman blinked, then her eyes widened slightly. "Ah, I was hoping those were just toys," she murmured before clearing her throat. But to answer your demand for our valuables, no. No. We kill. Give us valuables or you die. We burn house down. They bark some more, and the woman simply sighed, shaking her head as she set the tray aside. And I said no. We're not going to. She didn't get to finish, as her body was soon riddled with plasma bolts. The scent of burned flesh filled the room, and she dropped like a bag of bricks, a somewhat pained and surprised look on her face. The gangsters yipped with delight and began scooping up anything of value when they heard a new voice, one that was decidedly male. Oh, cookies. Bridget, you shouldn't have. The man paused in the entryway, having appeared from a set of stairs near the front door. The gangsters all froze, staring at him as he finished slipping into his shirt and nodded. Well, I suppose this is a robbery, isn't it? And I can see you've already met my wife, he said, the gangsters all raising their weapons to aim at him. He looked strange, deathly pale, and somehow both old and young at the same time. It was the eyes, it seemed, they held an ancientness to them that was impossible for any normal human to possess. Yet his exterior was vibrant and youthful, if a bit pale. Kill you. Like kill wife. The gangster who'd first fired upon Bridget yipped. And the man, Victor, nodded with a shrug. Sure, I suppose. Just one question before I'm so ruthlessly murdered in cold blood, he said, and the Unnell glanced at one another before the leader of the group waved his gun in assent. You didn't use silver to kill her, did you? Those look like plasma weapons to me. This confused the gangsters, who all frowned, and then the leader spoke up again. Why use silver? Plasma best kill. Kill. Well, you see, silver is the only thing that can kill her. Otherwise, all you're doing is slowing her down, and well, she gets mighty angry sometimes, as you're about to discover. Victor smiled, clasping his hands behind his back and flashing a set of immaculate teeth, two of which were far longer than they should have been. From behind the Unnell came a soft rumbling, which promptly turned into a deep and menacing growl. As one, they slowly turned and were forced to tilt their heads back as the once small and plump form of a human woman rose into and became a hulking, athletic mass of muscle and fur, her fingers capped with wicked claws and her mouth elongating into a maw filled with long, sharp teeth. I'm afraid to say, but you've picked the wrong house, lads. The leader of the group turned back, only to find Victor had crossed the distance between them in the blink of an eye, and that his mouth was open and descending for his neck. The tranquil stillness of the forest around the home was rudely shattered by the sound of gunfire and the roar of a werewolf before it went quiet once more. The animals, which had been quiet in the face of imminent danger, resumed their chirping and squeaking, and all was well. Not 8 hours later, a human walked up the path to the house, the uniform and badge he wore declaring him as law enforcement. As he stepped up to the front door, he noted it had been recently repaired, not that well, but well enough to be functional at least. So carefully, he knocked on it, and the response was prompt, the door swinging open on squeaky hinges and presenting him with the ever-youthful visage of Victor. "Evening, Victor," he said, tipping his hat to the vampire, who smiled broadly and nodded back. "Why, good evening to you too, Officer Thompson. What seems to be the problem?" Victor asked, leaning against the doorframe a bit. "No problem, just the same old, same old. Say, we seem to have lost track of a group of never-do-wells wandering around this area. You wouldn't have happened to seen or heard anything, would you?" Thompson asked, and Victor turned slightly, looking over his shoulder at his wife, who was currently knelt on the floor, a brush in one hand and a toothpick in the other. When she saw the police officer, she smiled and waved, all while scrubbing at the very large streaks of purple blood on the floor. "Can't say I have, officer, though should we, you'll be the first to know," Victor said, smiling warmly. And Thompson nodded, tipping his hat to Bridget as well, before taking a step back. "Thank you kindly, your cooperation is highly appreciated, folks," Thompson said, not at all disturbed by the grisly scene inside the house. He started back down the path, giving them a wave as he did. "Stay safe, you hear?" "Will do, officer. Have a lovely evening." Bridget called out and the door closed as Victor went to help his wife clean up. And so, once again there was peace and tranquility in the world. And the house in the forest would remain undisturbed for many years to come. The author's name and the link to original text is in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video.